The offseason is over. Week 0 is here. That means we have actual games this Saturday, 11 contests on tap, 3 games involving conference opponents, 6 Power 5 teams in action. I'm Stephen Lassen of All CFB 365. We're going to preview and predict every game in Week 0 and tell you the storylines that you need to watch. Before we get into the actual games for Week 0, I will ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to have coverage throughout the year, all throughout the offseason, involving all things college football. And be sure to check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at AllCFB365. The biggest game on Saturday has to be Nebraska versus Northwestern. It's a game that takes place in Ireland at 12:30 p.m. on Fox this Saturday. I think when you study this matchup, the biggest thing to take away is it's no doubt about it, a critical year for Scott Frost at Nebraska. He's just 15-29 since taking over at his alma mater. No winning season, no bowl game, and you can see the pressure and what it means for Nebraska. He made big staff changes over the offseason, brought in Mark Whipple, the veteran offensive coordinator, hit the transfer portal hard, including bringing in Casey Thompson, the Texas transfer, at quarterback. So there's a lot of new for Nebraska going into this game. This game will give us a good idea of how far in the revamp process things are for the Cornhuskers in a critical year for Scott Frost. For Northwestern, kind of a similar story of looking to get back on track. Even years have been very good for the Wildcats in 2018 and 2020. They won the Big Ten West title, so there's a lot of optimism that 2022 will be a lot better for Northwestern after they finished 3-9 last season. Both sides of the ball were a problem for Northwestern. They gave up 34 points a game in Big Ten contests and averaged only 16.6 points a game. The offense scored 14 or fewer points in each of the last 6 games. So I think on Saturday we'll be really interested to see if Northwestern's offense is better than it was last season. Northwestern defensively has traditionally been a lot better than we saw last year too, so we'll see if this group gets back on track. Looking back at last season's matchup may provide some insight into this game despite all of the changes for both teams. Nebraska won 56-7. They averaged nearly 9 yards per play while rolling up 657 total yards. So Nebraska completely dominated last year. They are favored by 13 points at the sports books going into Saturday's game. Everything here suggests that Nebraska should win. Considering all of the new faces and changes for Nebraska, that 13 points, you may want to stay away from it if you're looking at it from a spread perspective and betting. But overall, this matchup will give us a good idea of where both Nebraska and Northwestern are going into September, and what is a critical season for Nebraska, for Scott Frost to potentially save his job, and for Northwestern just to show that the program is back on track under Coach Pat Fitzgerald. The next matchup we will spot for Week 0 is Vanderbilt at Hawaii, late Saturday night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be on CBS Sports Network. Vanderbilt is the only SEC team in action for Week 0. If you go back to last season and remember that Vanderbilt lost to East Tennessee State in the season opener, Clark Lea's first season got off to a bad start, and of course Vanderbilt throughout the season struggled in SEC play. I think this is a must-win game for Vanderbilt. It's not about the hot seat for Clark Lea. He's trying to build a program, so he has plenty of time to show that the program is on the right track. But Vanderbilt is favored by just over a touchdown at 8 points. There's a lot of new faces expected to play in terms of freshmen, transfers, other guys that Vanderbilt has brought in. But after losing last year's game, it's critical for Clark Lea and his coaching staff to start to show progress. And in a game where they are favored by more than a touchdown, they should win on Saturday night. Hawaii has a ton of new faces stepping into the lineup as well, and it was an off season of change. Hawaii fired head coach Todd Graham. They hired Timmy Chang, the former quarterback will be the head coach now. They are switching back to the run and shoot on offense, but they bring back only 5 starters. There is a significant amount of turnover on both sides of the ball in terms of personnel. Also, there will be a new starting quarterback to be determined closer to game time. So I think the things that Hawaii has working for it is almost the element of surprise because of all the new faces. Not to mention, it is a long travel for Vanderbilt, even though they went over early to get adjusted. Last year, Hawaii lost by 18 points to Oregon State and lost by 34 to UCLA. So in matchups against Power 5 opponents, they were easily defeated. With all the new faces, it's hard to get a good read on Hawaii and what it means for the spread. But this Hawaii team comes into the year with significant question marks. There's plenty of motivation for Vanderbilt, but this is a team that was just 2-10 last year, brings back 13 starters. Mike Wright's the starting quarterback, named by Clark Lea early this offseason. So I think there's a lot of intrigue to see what Vanderbilt looks like in Clark Lea's second year. We'll see where Hawaii is under new coach Timmy Chang. Not an easy road trip, but the Commodores are favored, and I like them to start the year 1-0 and much better than last season. The third game we will spotlight in week 0 is Wyoming at Illinois. It starts at 4 p.m. It's on the Big Ten Network. Last year, Illinois played in week 0 as well. They beat Nebraska, so I think Brett Bielema obviously hoping to recapture some of that good luck and good fortune in 2021 into 2022. When you look at the overall matchup between these two teams, I think both these teams are very similar offensively. Both of these teams love to run the ball. Both of these teams come into the season with a question mark at quarterback. For Illinois, it will either be Tommy DeVito or Art Sitowski at quarterback. New offensive coordinator Barry Lunney still sorting through his options in fall practice. It seems like Tommy DeVito's probably going to be the guy for the Fighting Illini, but of course they will lean on a good group of running backs to build the offense around this season. On the Wyoming side of things, they went 7-6 last year. They averaged only 25 points a game, and that's a concern going into the season because, as we mentioned, they have a quarterback question mark. Andrew Peasley, the Utah State transfer, could be the starter here. Revamped offensive line. Also, the program's 2 best offensive weapons, Xavier Valade and Isaiah Nair, transferred. So this is an offense that had a lot of question marks last year, lost some of its best players, enters the year with a question mark at quarterback. Wyoming's defense brings back just 2 starters. I still think that this defense will be one of the better groups in the Mountain West. Illinois is favored by 10 points here. Considering the offensive question marks for Wyoming, that 10 points seems to be in the right range for Illinois. Somewhere in a 10 to 14 point spread is where I like the Fighting Illini to win this game on Saturday. Before we close out our preview for week 0, we will take a look at the rest of the schedule sort of in rapid fire fashion here. Austin Peay and Western Kentucky get the day started at noon Eastern. It's on CBS Sports Network. Austin Peay was 6-5 last year at the FCS level. The key thing here for Western Kentucky, we'll get the first look at the new Western Kentucky offense with Bailey Zappi gone to the NFL. The record-setting quarterback, Austin Reed, the transfer from West Florida, is expected to start. This is a game that Western Kentucky should be able to win, so this will give us a good idea of where this team is because they get Hawaii and they get Indiana coming up. So a good showcase for Western Kentucky. Later in the day, Idaho State takes on UNLV. It's 3:30 Eastern Time on CBS Sports Network. It is a must-win game for UNLV. Head coach Marcus Arroyo just 2-16 in his tenure with the Rebels. In terms of players to watch, keep an eye on UNLV's offense because Harrison Bailey, the Tennessee transfer, could start a quarterback. Ricky White, a receiver with upside, transferred from Michigan State to UNLV. UNLV has some interesting players to watch in this game, and they should be able to get off to a good start. Idaho State was just 1-10 last year, picked last in the Big Sky Media Poll for 2022. UConn at Utah State kicks off at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on FS1. Utah State was the biggest surprise in the Mountain West last year, winning the conference, finishing 11-3 under first-year coach Blake Anderson. A good chunk of that team is coming back this year, including Logan Bonner at quarterback. For UConn, it's a big year for changes. Jim Mora was hired as the head coach, 14 returning starters, but from a program that was just 4-32 over its last 3 seasons. And Taquan Robertson, the transfer from Penn State, could be the starting quarterback here for the Huskies. But the line opened at 33. It's been knocked down to 27. This is a game that Utah State is heavily favored, and based upon the matchup, they should pick up an easy win on Saturday. Duquesne at Florida State kicks off at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on the ACC Network, and really this is all about Florida State here. The Seminoles will be a heavy favorite against an FCS opponent, and also great timing for Florida State. They play LSU next week in New Orleans, so they get an opener to knock off the rust for the Seminoles. So Mike Norvell, Florida State should have no trouble winning on Saturday. Charlotte at FAU kicks off at 7 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. It's a matchup of conference opponents from Conference USA. It's only week 0, but this game could be pretty important. These two teams have been projected right around each other in most preseason Conference USA predictions. Go back to last season. Charlotte lost 38-9 to FAU. It was a game that FAU completely dominated, averaged over 8 yards of play. Charlotte had 3 turnovers. In terms of this year's matchup, Charlotte has one of the best offenses in Conference USA. Chris Reynolds, a great group of receivers, but defense is a big question mark. FAU is a much more well-rounded team. They need to get a spark going on offense with N'Kosi Perry at quarterback, but the defense is better than the one Charlotte will have. FAU is favored by 7. It's up from 5.5 when it opened up, so a lot of confidence coming in on the Owls. I like FAU to win on Saturday. Florida A&M travels to North Carolina, 8:15 Eastern Time on the ACC Network. For North Carolina, much like Florida State, a tune-up opportunity. Drake May was named the starting quarterback by Coach Mack Brown earlier in the week. This is a key game for North Carolina to work things out. They go to Appalachian State and they go to Georgia State coming up. So just working things out early in the year. This is a good warm-up opportunity for the Tar Heels. North Texas takes on UTEP at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Stadium. It's the second Conference USA matchup in week 0, and there's a lot of intrigue for me in this game because North Texas won 20-17 last year. The spread opened at 5 in favor of North Texas. It has been knocked down to just 1. So the Mean Green, just a slight favorite on the road. And when you study these two teams, there's not a ton of separation between these two. UTEP was good on offense last year at generating big plays behind Gavin Hardison at quarterback and Jacob Cowing at receiver. Cowing has now transferred to Arizona. UTEP should still be good along the line of scrimmage and at running back. For North Texas, kind of the same deal. They have a good collection of skill talent, one of Conference USA's better offensive lines, but there is a quarterback question mark. Austin Anune will be the starter. Grant Gunnell, the Memphis transfer, did not beat him out this fall. UTEP went 5-1 at home last season, and considering the spread is sitting around a point before kickoff, this is likely to be one of the more competitive and more even games in week 1. I like North Texas to win a close one outright on Saturday night. And finally, we will close out with a battle of first-year coaches. Nevada at New Mexico State at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. Ken Wilson taking over at Nevada for Jay Norvell, who left to be the head coach at Colorado State. Jerry Kill going to New Mexico State, I think is one of the best hires of the offseason. This matchup opened up with Nevada being a 17-point favorite. It is now down to just 9. So a lot of confidence that the Aggies at home can keep this close. Keep in mind, the Wolfpack have a ton of turnover. They return just 4 returning starters and along with the coaching staff transition, there's a lot of new at Nevada. New Mexico State brings back 7 starters from a defense that gave up over 40 points a game, and there's some uncertainty as to which quarterback the Aggies will pick. But there's a lot of confidence that the Aggies can keep this one much closer than the odds makers believed. I agree with the odds makers. I think the Aggies will keep it close, but I like Nevada to win on Saturday night. Although Week 0 doesn't have many marquee matchups, it's just great to have college football back. We've previewed all 11 games. Look forward to seeing what happens this Saturday and then previewing the big matchups for Week 1. I'm Steven Lasson, all CFB 365. Please be sure to subscribe and check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at all CFB 365.